You're thriving in school, you're thriving in ministry, thriving in your home life, your kids are doing well. And yet that season began to turn. Things began to unravel in ministry and in your personal life. What happened in that turn of events?
My husband had been struggling with his business. He was a financial counselor for various groups of people, and it wasn't going well. He did not share this with me, that this was in such a difficult circumstance. And he made a fateful decision of deciding to commit suicide. And as you can imagine, it was an absolute shock. I remember very well thinking, how come he's not home and where is he? And I found the letter and realized that I think this is what's happened. And all of a sudden, you know, your world just, it's just you're no longer in the same realm. It's like this whirlwind of anxiety and issues, everything all at once. And I had to tell my older children that my two older daughters were at home, and I imparted to them, said, I think this is what's happening. Before we tell the children, the younger ones, we have to be sure that this really is the case, that my husband is now passed away, and under what circumstances. And we waited for the police. And in that time, I stood in my bedroom, and I remember it was like a carousel, thinking, Lord, I don't know what to do. You know, I have no idea. You know, where am I supposed to go from here? Everything all at once. Everything like the kids' university education, how to buy milk next week, your job, everything all at once. And I simply remember saying, it's yours. You know, it's yours. Take it, whatever you ask of me, I'll take the next step. It was such a complete sense of docility, and I felt very much at ease, not knowing what was going to happen next, but I knew whatever that next step is, it's going to be the best one for us. In reflecting on these things today, one of the most poignant questions that the children asked was from my little girl. She was only 13 at that time. And she said, it's silence in the car. And she says, Mommy, who's going to walk me down the aisle when I get married? Oh my gosh. She's like, I don't know, honey. We're going to figure that out. And we did. The good thing about it is I knew God, and I knew who he was. I knew head-wise who he was, and I now needed to learn this in my heart. Did I really trust God as he's asking me? And for me, I talked a little about, it was our Eve moment there. Eve in the garden is terrified. She doesn't know what's going to happen. And she makes a fateful decision and relies on herself. And succumbs to the serpent, to evil. I think my husband was in the very same situation. He saw bankruptcy coming down and didn't turn to his pastor, didn't turn to me, didn't turn to the older kids who could have helped from the business side of things. And he made a fateful decision, and that ends in death. I knew God was going to provide for us in some way, and we were going to get through this.
Yeah.
And we did.
Yeah, you certainly did. You know, Pat, your strength is very inspiring, and I know it's not easy, of course, and what you've gone through is incredibly challenging. You know, you mentioned that you had this head knowledge of God, and you'd studied about who God was so much. You'd done a master's degree in that, in Bible studies and all, you know, all the things you would find out about who God is theologically. But yet you needed to have that heart knowledge of God.
Yes, yeah.
Who was God for you before, and then who was God for you after this crisis?
He hasn't changed. He's just expanded in our knowledge and our growth towards him very much. I feel now, looking back after 10 years of living in Canada again, that this experience was expressly given to me in order to be able to witness the fact that you can get through a crisis. And if we trust and say, all right, what do you have for me? Open up your mind and heart to the wonderful things that he has in store. And I would say the grandbabies are one of those things. My work, us meeting, all these kinds of things are things that I could never have envisioned 10 years ago.
That's right. And, you know, in that moment when you had just lost your husband and shortly after, you know, there were different factors, but your faith community wasn't present. You didn't have an income. You know, I know your story, and you end up being in a foreign country with all your kids. What happens next? But yet you bound together as a family, and you are all in Prince Edward Island now. You've gone back, so that's about 10 years ago. And today you're serving in an incredible capacity, teaching women that they can survive the crisis of an unplanned pregnancy.
Yes.
for Life Canada.
Yes, truly, this is, I think, well, it's God's plan. Why are we surprised that we're surprised? That He saw this and prepared for, us to be able to speak on this, not only from my perspective as the mother, but also from the children. My kids are very much involved, very supportive of the work I do. They, in their own right, are witnesses to life, and their story proclaims the goodness of God. I work in the pro-life movement. I work in marriage preparation and tell this story to my couples in order to, when life is grand, marriage is easy. It's when the crisis hits and unexpectedly, and crises are all unexpected. Nobody sets out to have a crisis. That's the nature of it, but we can prepare ourselves to be better prepared, and that is the way to open up that communication with God, understand who Christ is, what He wants for us, and the beauty of His desires, and the fullness that we can't even begin to fathom of what He sees in us. And a mother perhaps looks at her child and can see how the child will develop and the beauty within, and God looks ever so much more at us and sees that as well.
And you know, Pat, for that woman watching right now, or that man watching right now, who's saying, I have just hit a crisis, an unprecedented crisis I did not expect, and my life has been turned upside down, what would you say to them?
When I realized that He's God and I'm not, and why I put my faith in God is because God is unlimited. So take your grace, infuse it in me, grow me, expand my heart, remove from me whatever is there, keeping me from understanding that fullness of your love in my life. And when we look back, we'll see moments like that, where every one of us has thought, gosh, today's the day I can't move anymore. That's it. I'm at the end of my rope. But yet, here we are. We have moved forward, and we know since we're limited, it wasn't our doing, so it's got to have been somebody else. And that is our Lord, and He's waiting there to do that for us. So give it back to Him while whatever is on your heart, and start today. Today's the day we have to work with.
Wow, so good, Pat. Today certainly is the day we have to work with, and it's the day God will work with us on whatever we're going through. Pat, thank you so much for sharing such a beautiful personal story of incredible challenge, but incredible healing and restoration. Thank you for being with us today, Pat.
Thank you so much.
If you're struggling in this moment with something that is unprecedented and so painful, whether it is the loss of a loved one or the loss of a life you thought you would have, we want to encourage you in this moment that there are prayer partners waiting to pray with you. Please call 1-866-273-4444. Pat's life is living proof that God can turn all things together for our good, that no matter what you are facing, if you invite God into the crisis, everything can change. In the Bible, in Jeremiah 29:11, it says, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you a future and a hope." That's God's promise for you today also.